You're listening to 102.9 WFPRLP, Franklin Public Radio.
Okay, time being shortly thereafter 5:30, I call the October 30th meeting of the Police Station Building Committee to order. Okay, a note to residents, all citizens are welcome to attend public meetings in person. To view the live meeting remotely, citizens are encouraged to watch the live stream on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel or the live broadcast on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. Meetings are also archived by Franklin TV on the Franklin Town Hall TV YouTube channel and shown on repeat on Comcast Channel 9 and Verizon Channel 29. For those who missed the live meetings, to listen to the meeting remotely, citizens may call in using this number, 929-205-6099. This will not permit participation in the meeting. To participate in the meeting remotely, citizens are able to join a Zoom webinar using the information below. Zoom webinar ID 890-9769-2430 #. Again, the webinar ID is 890-9769-2430. Then you need to hit the # sign. Any participants who wish to speak during the webinar must enter their full name and email address when joining the webinar. All participants will be automatically muted upon joining the webinar. In order to speak, participants who have entered full name and email address will need to select the raise hand function to request to be unmuted. All speakers will be required to state their full name and street address before commenting. Okay, first items on the agenda tonight's approval of minutes. I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes from August 23rd, 2023.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion, additions, deletions. Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from January 24th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, additions, deletions. Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I'd now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from May 13th, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I was not at that meeting. It has me present, so.
Okay. Jamie, would you make that adjustment, please?
That was the May 13th?
May
Jimmy?
13th, Jim was at a conference. Maker of the motion, would you, as amended?
Yeah, I make a motion for the minutes of May 13th, 2024, as amended.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, the vote will come on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jamie?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to give Mr. D'Angelo the quick honor of just introducing Joe real fast. I know there's a sheet that he's handed out at all of your desks on a timeline. Joe is no stranger to Franklin. I know you guys know that, and I feel, even though I've been here almost 10 years, you two have been working with Joe for 25 years or so.
Don't remind me.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, you or Mike could do a quick intro to Joe, and then Joe can take it from there. And I just wanted to walk through with everybody the general steps moving forward. Obviously, on the 14th, we have another meeting for the architect selection, but I figured Joe can, now that we've hired the OPM, I'm gonna do my point guard here and dish the rock to Mr. Sullivan, yeah.
Very well done. Mike, you want to?
Sure. So we all interviewed the three OPMs, and we picked CHA. Joe has been working here for many years, since Senior Center,
Fire station?
Fire Station, high school, but he has it all on the list. But so Joe's been doing this a long time with us, and Joe can go through the program, and everybody can ask questions about, what we're doing, where we're going, and hopefully we can get this rolling and get a designer on board soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And I'll just add that I've had the pleasure to work with Joe on the high school as well as the senior center. And I don't think we could have made a better choice. That's the only thing you're going to get out of Joe. That's the last positive.
It's more than I get, Joe, so take it.
No, but he's been a pleasure to work with, and CHA is a great firm. And, I'm very happy that they're on board and that Joe's project manager. So.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you for having me back. What I've provided for, well, let me just tell you a couple of things that we've done. Working with Pam from the town and Mike, we put an RFQ together. We ended up, I want to say there were eight?
I think it was
Seven firms that actually submitted on it. And, it's it's actually comical to see an RFQ that's written so clearly, and architects typically don't provide all of the documentation or the requirements associated with it. So it's just the level of detail that they, end up providing that gives us the understanding and stipulation of what details are going to be provided as they move forward. So we were able to really identify and pick 3 firms that we're going to be interviewing, and that would be November 14th, as we discussed earlier. The 3 firms all have a lot of fire experience. The culture in Franklin is important to me. Make sure that they're able to build the station that not only fits the town of Franklin, but fits the community that it's going to be placed wherever that location may be and be determined at. The interview, I've already put together a list of interview questions that I think would best fit the architect's interview process. I encourage the town to look them over, and if they wanted to add or edit any of them, feel free to do so. But I tried to take careful consideration into the town and the dynamics of what we're looking for to make sure that we capture their answers and provide specific questions to the program needs of the police station as we move forward. So November 14th is the scheduled date for the architects for their interviews. I believe we're going to give them an hour. It's 45 minutes, half hour presentation, 15 minutes of question, and that gives us 15 minutes or so that we'll be able to at least have some conversation before the next group comes in. At that point, I think, once we've put our tally sheets and our score sheets together, we should be able to at least identify off of the interviews, the number 1 proposed candidate, and then we'll negotiate a fee at that point. In the event that we don't negotiate a fee, a reasonable fee, then we can go to the second most qualified person that we chose. But just remember, we can't go back to the first once we've done that. So we'll do our best to make sure that we try to come to terms. I've worked with all 3. That's good news, and I know I have a relationship pretty much with all of them. I know their strengths and weaknesses, so I'll be able to make sure that the contract and the deliverables included in the contract are comprehensive. Last thing I want to do is see extra services as we move forward. It usually, typically after the scoring of the architect, it takes about 3 to 4 weeks to execute the contract in its entirety. I mean, it'll be back and forth. Sometimes town council will want language within the contract, and they'll want little tweaks to it, getting the insurance certificates and everything in board. But I think, based on that, we should be able to execute it relatively quickly. Once that happens, we're going to get right into a meeting with the department and start to evaluate the program. Things are going to happen simultaneously. The program's going to be looked at, and they're going to really do an evaluation on exactly what today's needs are, but forecasting what the next 50 years might include, and make sure that we're building in flexibility. And that was one of the things that, having done 9 police stations, 6 public safety buildings, flexibility is the biggest thing that we didn't do early on when we started to do police station. We built it for the needs with a little bit of expansion, but we never looked for the flexibility because the operations of a police department have evolved over the last 6 years. So we're making sure that we're efficiencies within the building, but we're also building flexibility because their programs will change. As they're doing the program, site selection is obviously going to be a main category. Although there are a lot of sites, Franklin is built out, and so they're going to have to do a clear analysis on what makes the most sense. Most police stations take anywhere between 4 to 6 acres of land to actually build a proper facility. And that includes, having a secured back of the station where you can actually fence it off and secure that area from the public. As much as we want the public to come into the station, we also need to protect the police department and any of the equipment and evidence that they might have on the backside of the station. So that's the reason why the proximity of 4 to 6 acres is equivalent to an average size of that size station. As we go through and we finalize a preferred site evaluation, there's going to be a lot of analysis done on that site. I mean, there'll be borings, test pits, and traffic studies done to just determine it's the right selection of that particular site. Each step of the way, and I identified, I call it deliverables, but the conceptual design is going to basically take the program, take this, preferred, they're gonna take the program and do a conceptual design. They're gonna take that conceptual design and out of 3 sites, I'm gonna utilize that as a proximity, they're gonna lay that building on that site to see how the flow of the building's gonna work and the layout on that particular site. We're going to vote, and I say we, I like to have the committee vote at every step of the way, because moving backwards is not an option to try to meet our goals for town meetings as we're gonna be moving forward. So I'm gonna be adamant about, making sure that we meet the program needs. We're gonna meet with the departments regularly to make sure they're incorporating. The thing I will not build is I'm not gonna build you a Taj Mahal. I'm gonna make sure we meet your program needs. And then we're architecturally gonna make this building very beautiful for the town, frankly, bottom line. As we move through each of these steps, you're gonna see on the list that I gave you, there's several entities that get evolved into this. There'll be building sections, building elevations with each phase as we move forward. But I've included, and I will include in the contract, a minimum of 3 cost estimates. The reason why I do that is a check and balance to not only determine the program that we've designed, but the costs associated where we are. After conceptual, right around probably midway, I'm gonna know roughly where the building size is, and I'm gonna do your preliminary budget. I'm gonna get an approval from the overall group that the items that have included, and just have some dialogue back and forth of where I think it's gonna be at that point. And I wanna try to have the committee feel comfortable enough that we try to stick to that. It may go one way or the other as the design evolves and the requirements for the program happen. But I wanna make sure that, we hold the designer accountable all the way through those steps, because I call it design creep. And what ends up happening is as designs evolve, the cost of particular items within the building tend to creep up. And I want to make sure that we identify where those items are and come up with some good, considerations and how we can reduce costs and make sure we save the budget.
So we're not gonna carry a design contingency then, right?
They do anyway, so no matter, and that's, let me just.
20%.
Yeah, and let me tell you that it's not.
Those 2 line items always get you.
Yeah,
So Joe knows that.
Yeah, and so what ends up happening and just to Tom's point, I think it's a great point, and I think it needs to be discussed. As a designer is designing, and I'm gonna use it in layman terms, all of the meat and potatoes are not in the stew at that point. So they're holding a design contingency. We're costing out a square footage cost, but as the mechanical, electrical, and sprinkler systems and any other equipment are slowly being designed and included in the overall drawings and specifications, the design contingency slowly shrinks down and it dissipates within the design. So the design contingency should always be included in total the overall construction budget, just to be crystal clear. It's not above and beyond, all right? There is a construction contingency that we're going to talk about, and that construction contingency is something that, based on a knockdown and build new, there'll be a certain value that I'll think a percentage should be held, and then if it's new construction, it's another value that I'll carry on that. I will solidify that with the town and I will explain the reasons why I think it should be carried at X. And it might be site location, depending on where you pick. The proximity in town, the getting out of the ground is the hardest. So depending on the site you pick will be determined on where I think that contingency should be, just to protect the town's best interest. That make sense?
Unsuitable soils?
Yeah. Unsuitable, so you're always gonna throw like salt in a cut.
Only because I've been through it.
He was talking about Franklin High School. When 495 got built, town of Franklin accepted a lot of organic material that was from and it built great fields, by the way. However, you're not able to stabilize a large building on it, so we ended up having to remove that and replace it with suitable material to bear on. And that
Construction contingency.
That's right. And it was a painful one, but we negotiated a great deal.
We did.
We did well with it, so.
We did, for sure.
So each step of the way is gonna be conceptual, schematic design. At schematic design, we're gonna do another quick cost estimate update to make sure that we're staying within those parameters. There's certain levels of detail that will be provided. We're gonna do a page turn, and that page turn will be with the department and whoever building committee would like to be there. And the reason why I do that is that you can clearly understand and we can articulate the needs of each program portion of the building and why they're being proposed. We'll vote on that and then we'll move into design development. That's when everything really starts to come together. All of the mechanical systems will be there, the floor plans, the elevations, the structural design will be more formatted, and they're gonna continually, that'll evolve. When the design development is done, that's a critical point. And why I say that is that from design development to construction documents, it's only about a 3-month period. So you can imagine it's 60% roughly of design development. We want to make sure we got it right before we move forward. There'll be another takeoff estimate done at that point, make sure we're in line. We'll get a vote from the committee that, because moving backwards isn't an option based on the timelines that we're going to. And then we're gonna move into construction documents. Ideally, at construction, 90% construction documents, we're gonna do a final estimate. That estimate's gonna be what we're gonna probably more than likely discuss with the council and Jamie about, you know, the cost associated with the overall project. The cost of construction and all of the soft costs, which I will have a preliminary budget outlining every line item on that. And just making sure that we're covering all of the incidentals so that, you know, there's not an, oh, that we forgot this. Most of the FF&E will be included as part of that. We will identify, and I've done it successfully with the city of Brockton, grants that are out there for furniture or equipment that might be qualified.
Yeah, just explain FF&E there, maybe.
Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, I'm sorry. I'm using acronyms, so I should probably be a little more clear on it.
There'll be $1 million before we're done.
There will be. So the furniture will be any of the fixtures appropriate for the building. The internal components, server, and any of the access control, all of that is another portion of purchase that we're gonna have to take into consideration. Evidence storage, believe it or not, like there's some items that we're gonna be buying outside of the general contractor that we have to meet the criteria of the Massachusetts guidelines to store evidence and handle evidence as we move forward. And that's, it goes as conclusive as just the lockers themselves to refrigeration that we're gonna need for specific tests that might occur through the police operations. So we're gonna make sure that we handle all of that. Record storage, I mean, that alone is a whole nother entity. And the process of how we handle that record storage within that particular space will be another category. The cells associated with any of the detained locations. And what I've found over the last 3 to 4 years, a lot of a lot of towns and cities don't hold detainees very long. They typically transport them pretty quickly. There's holding cells as they do the booking, and they try to move them to a better location so that they can be monitored a little bit easily. And that may be something that we'll talk about, like, you're gonna need a certain number of cells, we're just gonna determine how we're gonna do that layout and what the best booking process is gonna be as we move forward. There'll be equipment, computers, there'll be some stationary equipment needed to service the building. That's all included within the furniture, fixtures, and equipment that are gonna be qualified for. Part of the budget's gonna be testing, and that testing includes concrete, compaction, all the necessities to make sure that the site, the building itself, the quality of the building is all meeting the specification requirements as we move forward. Commissioning is gonna be a huge one. We've designed systems in Massachusetts now that the end user has no idea how to run them once you take occupancy of it. We'll probably hire a third-party commissioning agent to do a point-to-point. So if you turn on that thermostat, he's gonna be able to tell you what the mechanical system is doing on the rooftop, and let you know whether the fan's running, the temperature of it, what the airflow is on it. And in addition to that, we're going to insinuate and make sure that it's incorporated in the specification. We have a training session done, and that training isn't just 8 hours of having the police department sit there and get numb over what they're saying. We're gonna videotape it, we're gonna do it in 2-hour sessions so that you don't get numb from it, because I've sat through them and I've gotten to the point where it's overload, you can't retain it all the time. And you have a change in staffing, you have no way of retraining that if someone, took all that information with them. So by having the videotape sessions, it gives the chief and his department the ability to self-train other people. So that'll all be part of the specifications and the qualifications as we move forward to the general. Once we get to bidding, we're gonna be moving forward, and from the interview, we were leaning towards 149, is that fair to say?
Yep.
So that, what that means is that we're gonna pre-qualify all the fire subcontractors and general contractors. I've worked over my 30-plus years career, I've worked with a lot of general contractors that, have public safety and police station experience, and those are the people that we're gonna, reach out to, make sure that they're aware the project's coming. But we're also gonna, engage them and ensure that they participate in the bidding process. We'll pre-qualify those individuals, because if you've done a police station 10 times, your likelihood of doing the next one is gonna be that much better as you move forward. And same with the fire subcontractors. There's 18 fire subcontractors. We're gonna probably use 17 out of the 18, my gut feeling. And that being said, those will all be pre-qualified. The good news is we'll be getting a good bidding pool. That means we're getting anywhere between 3 and 5 subcontractor and general contractors for each project as we're moving forward within the Commonwealth right now. So that's good news. The bad news is the numbers haven't come down since the pandemic. So where we were doing construction anywhere between $420 a square foot pre-pandemic, it's $99.50 right now a square foot. I'm not trying to give a sticker shock, that's just where the bids have been coming in. So what we have seen is the materials have somewhat stabled. And so we're not seeing a steep decline, but we're not seeing an increase like we were seeing in day one. We have actually parts on the shelf that we didn't even have before. Electrical and switch gear parts were next to impossible to get. Those are readily available now. Ordering a generator was 6 to 9 months. Those are a little more attainable now. Building this building is as efficient as we need to meet not only the code, but the town's requirements. We're gonna have a lot of discussion about that. The mechanical systems, the requirements associated with it, making the building solar ready for the future, making, maybe some canopies solar ready, because we wanna try to offset any of the costs that when you move from a building to a new building, it's more efficient, it's a little larger, and your costs of running it in operation may be a little higher. We wanna try to offset that as much as possible. So we're gonna work with all the mechanical engineers to make sure we identify all those. The bidding, once we're pre-qualified, we'll go through the 149, we'll get the fire subcontractors bids in, and hopefully they'll be very successful and under budget, and then hopefully the same with the general, and then it'll be, we're hoping to go to the debt override, I would assume, at 90% of that value. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, pretty close, yeah.
Okay. And what I'll do, just to cover, make sure that we're not undercutting ourselves, I'll estimate the escalation through midpoint of construction. That way we'll have a number at that point.
Perfect.
Right? Public forums are gonna probably be the most important part of this process. We wanna engage the public. We wanna make sure that we're very transparent. We wanna make sure that they're knowledgeable about all of the components necessary to run the operations as we move forward to a point, obviously, and the need for it. And make them part of the solution. I mean, I've been involved with some towns where people were dead set against, any type of construction. When you engage them and you actually hear what, everybody's opinion matters. It's just a matter of articulating, what the concerns are and providing good answers back to them that are reasonable to them and make them part of the solution as we move forward. So I encourage that we do them regularly, and it's probably gonna be 4 to 5 by the time we're done to get to the construction documents. And I'll coordinate that with the town and make sure that we do it in different parts of the town so that we can get more of the town to come to those public forums, because it is very important. And they do ask some consideration on a question. We have an abutters meeting. That's gonna be something that I'm gonna do right out of the box. When we finally have a site location, I think that'll maybe one of the first public forums that we have. We'll get the abutters from there, because that insight from them will help the designer and the civil engineer tweak the building or maybe the locality of a parking lot that better suits the neighborhood. Any questions for Bob? I'm doing a lot of talking. Right?
Questions?
Just quick.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Hi, this is more for our group. I think we, as a board here, need to not have sticker shock either when you see these FFE line items. Because I know I was kind of new to this when we bought all the furniture and everything, and you can't be cheap. I mean, I think the chief could even say this, there's a lot of chairs at that station that they've gotten 20, 25 years out of.
Not
I
my
mean-
choice.
Well, no, but if they bought the cheapest
Right.
version of everything,
They wouldn't have
it
it.
wouldn't have lasted. That's
So-
what I think we need to understand
Yeah,
too.
so I'm going to give you a range, and what we end up doing with FF&E, we solicit through the state bid list, and we'll bring actually pieces of furniture into the committee meeting, and in the department, to be able to actually look at and touch and feel the durability of it. There are certain components, there are certain desk configurations and that work better than some, that are more durable than others. The coordination associated with them is probably the more critical part, making sure data power and all of that layout within that room of where it's being set up is not only in the right place, but flexible enough, because if they expand or they add a second person or administrator within a particular space, you want to make sure that there's power on both sides of the room so they have the ability to do so. And the knockouts, Mike, how many times have we put furniture together, you put a desk against the wall and you can't get power or data because there's no knockout or they didn't think it through. We'll actually tape out on a floor the layout of the room in comparison to where the furniture's gonna be, to make sure that as the building's going vertical, we know that, before the boxes and the switches are put in, that they're in the right location. So we'll be pretty thorough going through that, and we'll identify the costs associated with that, but I will give you a lower range and a higher range, and normally we come somewhere in the middle, somewhere, budget-wise.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brian. Any other questions? Mr. DeLoco?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just trying to wrap all this together. I still don't understand why we need 4 to 6 acres.
You need 4 to what?
4 to 6 acres for the job.
So,
I mean, I'm a city kid, so I
Yeah.
grew up in Boston, so I know the police stations in Boston's 2 city blocks, 3 city blocks. I don't get it.
so
Even Boston headquarters I rode by on the way into work this morning, might be 4 blocks,
Right. So one of the difficulties with most departments, you gotta remember there's shift changes. So the parking facility that you're gonna need for, not only the people are coming into work, but the people leaving. So there's a certain number of spaces that we're gonna need, not including any of the, apparatus and cars that they're gonna have there. So that alone is X. Typically, there's an outbuilding associated with most police stations, and you're gonna need a certain amount of acreage for that particular building, because what they end up doing, although we have a sally port associated with this building, and a sally port is the location where they typically bring in detainees and they do the processing to get through booking.
Yeah.
That takes up a certain amount of space. So it's the traffic flow around. They need a secured area behind that particular station. In the city, and I've done a couple within the city, a lot of the police officers don't have a designated parking spot within that station. They park, on a city lot
Yeah,
somewhere.
I get that.
It's not like you have, and the good news is that, the cruisers that are on duty are coming in, they're getting off duty, and those cruisers are back out on the street, but you still have locations within that site plan that's gonna need a specific setback that's gonna be required for, you don't want the public intervening on the police operation, so that, there's a lot of,
Yeah, no,
layout
I'm just kinda curious, that's all,
yeah,
for me.
what I will do for you is, my next meeting, I'll bring you a couple examples of some site plans of similar size that we're proposing here,
Mhm.
and it'll show you the acreage that we're
Okay.
doing. I think that'll put your mind at ease.
No, I'm just like, I'm just saying,
The
Pictures
Boston
worth a
Police
thousand
and much different as far as, they don't have the luxury to be able to get the space needs or requirements that they have for a town or city.
no, that's all right, just kinda curious, but that's
I
fine.
hope I answered your question.
No, yeah, I was just kinda curious, that's all.
Yeah.
Chief?
The only other thing I would add is that one thing that we lack that we'd like to do is heavy on training, probably more than most other departments. We don't have the facility right now where we can basically ask a company to come out for expensive training and they'll give us 3, 4 free seats, but yet we have to offer it to 40 other people, 40 other participants to come from other agencies and stuff like that, because we don't have the classroom space and we certainly don't have the parking space. So you have your regular operation going on, and now you're gonna have 40 other, participants in that training show up. Kind of like when the fire department does it, they gotta ask the bank, hey, can we park while they're using the EOC at headquarters? The other thing is that classroom's also, I want it to be a community room so that it can be used not just for the police department, not just for our training and other things, but so that others, if they needed a place to do something, would be able to come and actually use it.
Those are so great points, and I'll give you an example of what happened. In Middleborough, we did a 4.5 acre site, and the first training, we built a training room, the first training session that they had, because what ends up happening is when you host training, it's free for your department. Everyone else ends up having to contribute to that. Middleborough was so packed, they ended up going down to the green school and have to commute the people to do the training. And that's a great point. And if you did that not only for training, but if you utilized it for town use in the future for that, you're gonna want additional parking. So I'm gonna give you some site.
Well, that makes sense, I'm just kinda curious. That's
Yeah,
all.
no, those are great points, though. It was a great
And we
point.
actually saw it firsthand when we went on a tour to the Needham Police Station, and we could not find any parking, remember? And the reason was they had crisis intervention training going on in their community room, and we had to park on the street, and everything else to try to go there to tour the building. It's the first thing I asked the chief, what about the parking? He said, we'd love more parking, but we can only buy so many houses, is what they had to do to actually find the space to be able to build their new station.
Jamie?
And to that same point, that may be a small revenue source, because there's a lack of training facilities within this entire region. And the chief has been very creative, but when I started here, what we currently do in Bellingham and other communities on some singular training issues. And I think that's gonna be a conversation point for this committee, but also the community about where's that price point of adding in this stuff. But I think regionally, I think the chief would agree, Franklin ends up becoming kind of a mini center, if you will, for a lot of the regions around here, and we may be able to get some revenue sources out of that. The other point I want to make really quickly is, on the outreach, what does the committee want, and how many of those do you want to have? I'm going to ask Joe to put together some sites, right? Because we all know the site selection has been at least bubbled up a little bit in town. We've got the former Parmenter School eventually, we've got the Davis Thayer site, which I know many people have heard about at the Davis Thayer Committee. But in addition to sites, what else does the committee want to show the public to engage a discussion? I think Joe just brought up maybe some other examples, just some other buildings. But going out and soliciting feedback, usually we have to kind of present something. And then also for this board, how many times do you want to have a community outreach meeting? Do you want to have 2, 5? Those are coming up early part of the year. Do you want to just do 1 community outreach? I mean, that's something.
I think, my opinion,
Yeah.
we would want to do 4.
4. That's.
And so to your
Based
point,
upon prior,
to Jamie's point though, getting the architect on board is gonna be the first point of actually determining, the program needs and what sites are gonna best work. Because at the end of the day, you don't wanna go to a public forum and say, we're proposing this, but that may not be the location. You wanna make sure that it works within, that particular location. So to the committee, they will bring, 3 or 4 different site locations, but there'll be a
Okay.
preferred everything, you're gonna see the preferred option. At that point, you start to have the public forums.
And that's partly what the chief said a minute ago, but, whether there's a current site that the town already owns, or whether we have to go buy houses on a street, the public, I think, needs to understand that, another $10 million, $20 million to buy houses and parcels probably may not be financially feasible, but I think it's important to note, and I'm glad you said that, because the architect will do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
and I would think we would want to do that, at least 1 or 2 of them would be site-based.
Correct.
Right.
And even before we get to that, Deputy,
Oh, we were talking about possibly doing a video, I know Needham did it, where they filmed the current station when we talk about what the needs are.
Existing
So if we do a video, a walkthrough, and we can kind of
Yeah.
narrate that and explain to the
Great
public
idea.
in the
Great
video
idea.
what we currently have and what we need and why we need it, and then we can refer the public back to that video in the future. So, you know, it's there on YouTube or wherever we put it forever, so.
We did that successfully in every town, and what we end up doing is that narrative, and one of your department heads should be doing the narrative, because it's the operations and how you utilize that building in so many different ways to, when you expand and you don't have the space, you become very inventive of like utilization of space. And that video is so telling, it really is. And you should run that on, if you have public television, you should run it the whole time as you're going to that point to get to town meeting. And the public forum portion of it is something that you can revert back to, because if someone has a question, well, why do you need it? You can throw that right up and show exactly what it is.
yeah, and we also want to do open houses for people that are not so much on television, but they're more visual, they want to come and see it. Because I think there's a misconception that the police station was built a decade ago.
Right.
It was built in 1991. There's a misconception on how far back the building goes, whether we have a basement, which we do not. It doesn't go back far because it's surrounded by wetlands. You know, how much parking we have and so forth, and that it is 10,000 square feet. And then you'll see there are 4 people assigned to this office. And they're like, wait a minute, this is the size of my office, and there's only one.
You need
You know, in my
videotape
business
that,
where I work, and so, you know, those are some of the you know, if they have an opportunity through the video or to come at an open house,
Okay.
to be able to educate them that, you know, why are we even asking for
It's
this?
essential.
All set, chief? All set, Jim?
Thank you.
Just a quick question. Will the FF&E design be outsourced or?
Well, the architect, I can tell you 2 things. The architect will do I'm gonna require they do a furniture layout within the facility. I will send, the good news is through the state bidding procurement, most of the furniture vendors will do a layout for you.
Okay.
Based on your configuration and the furniture choices that you make, they'll give you a set of plans that will have that layout. And they'll give you costs associated with the quality of furniture that you're looking to choose from.
Kelsey?
I actually just had a question on the site selection. So like any subsurface investigation, are you gonna perform that before we select the site? Because that will have like a added cost to the.
So part of my budget is gonna have borings and test pits. Typically, you know, in the past, we had DPW do the test pits. They came out with a backhoe and did that. Borings we included as additional services with the architect. It's not usually that much money. We do that on a number of different reasons, and we try to do that before we have a final site selection. And the reason being is the unforeseen conditions that you may discover from that may determine a different site location based on that.
Yeah.
Because we'll do it, like if we find ledge, if we find unsuitable, we're gonna put a cost associated with remediation of that. And we need to know what that cost is as we're moving forward on it.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep,
Might sway the selection.
Yeah.
it would,
Yeah.
no doubt in my mind.
Sure. All set, Kelsey?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Continue.
All right, so, we're gonna talk about like the construction aspect of it. Most construction projects of this size are anywhere between 16 and 18 months back in the day. Most, general contractors are asking for 20 months. And now I'm gonna tell you the reason behind it. It's getting some of the material, and most of the file subcontractors, if you're gonna get competitive bidding, you give them a little longer duration, you're not gonna be paying premium time to get it done within those 18 months. So based on the size of this building, and based on the technical quality of the building, I'll determine with the architect how long I think we should put it out there for the construction period. It just means there may be a little added general condition for the general contractor, but your file subcontractor numbers may come down because they're not having the, electricians that used to have 16 have 8, so to try to build it in 18 months, it's time and a half or double time just to get it done during that duration. If you make it 20 months, they can do it under normal time and meet your budget requirements. So those will be discussions that we're gonna have. I would strongly recommend that we start soliciting and going after furniture once we're at the design development to construction documents. The reason being is we're gonna have hard numbers, what that's gonna be, and we can really talk about quality and what we can afford. As construction, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to buy it, but we're gonna know what those costs are. As we move through construction, typically around that same period, around 50 to 60% completion, is when we're gonna start looking at buying furniture, because we're gonna know getting out of the ground's the hardest. The architects usually do a really good job and minimize the overall cost of change orders within the building, and then we have the ability to buy or not buy as we move forward. If we're finding it's really tight, we may hold off and see where we're at as we get to 80% before we start to really go crazy on buying all of the FF&E. That make sense? And then we get into, throughout that whole process, so the commissioning agent, why I recommend getting them on board early, is twofold. One, they're gonna be part of the review of the design from the mechanical engineers that'll be out there to make sure that what they're designing is gonna be controllable and be able to easily be commissioned. They'll periodically go through the construction aspect of it and make sure that the installation practices are being done appropriately, and the equipment that we're paying for, because under a 149, there's 3 or equal for every specification section as we build that. That means 3 different light fixtures are gonna be specified. The subcontractor has the ability to pick any one of them as long as it meets the specification and bid it appropriately. We're gonna wanna make sure the equipment's the same way with the commissioning agent. The lighting controls and the mechanical HVAC equipment is all being installed appropriately, meeting the specifications. That make sense to everybody?
Everybody understand the commissioning agent?
Basically a third party.
Yeah.
Third party,
Yeah, we have the engineer Racket who designed it.
Yeah.
We wanna make sure he did a good job too.
right, another set of eyes.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, and it's short money for a long-term gain.
And it wasn't that long ago that we put in the new evidence room with everything. And that stuff is still very new. And where they put slide evidence in and then it gets taken and put on a shelf. But it's all the higher, where it rolls together. And we can take that with us and just add to it. So, I don't know, that wasn't that long ago.
I talked to the guy that installed it in Boston at the IACP conference.
Yeah, and that can be demobilizing and remobilize the location. And part of that is essential because the architect of record is really we're gonna have those conversations. What equipment do you plan on relocating? And then that'll be incorporated into the design. And if you need additional base because you built out too much, we're gonna identify those spaces. That's what I meant about the flexibility and making sure we're building efficiencies within the building. A corridor may not have to be 9 feet wide, it could be 7 feet wide, and you'll gain 2 feet within the building somewhere else. Those are the type of things that I want to make sure we pay attention to.
Yeah, and I think those pieces pieces of equipment and so forth that we can move from one building to another is most important to the community. For the community to know that we are looking to value engineer everything.
Yeah, and that part of it, and just to be clear, is essential for 2 reasons. One, we need to know if there's power requirements or size location requirements that we incorporate within the building. Nothing aggravates me more is that we talk about utilizing a piece of equipment. The engineer of record doesn't, look at that it actually needs a 4-prong, 30 amp circuit, not a 20. We put a 20 in place and we end up chasing it later. So those are the type of coordination meetings that it's going to be essential as we move forward on an identification. I'll need the department's help. You're going to have to tell me what you would like to bring over and see if we don't have cut sheets on it, we're going to chase them down and find them because that'll be the information that'll hurt us later on. So, at that point, once we bid, town meeting, we get the approval, everybody says, yes, this is a wonderful building. We'll solicit the contractor, and I'm saying anywhere between 18 and 20 months, and then typically it's 2 months of closeout. During that 2 months of closeout, I want substantial completion in the department, in the building, as we're doing the punch list and warranty items. And the reason being is, you're gonna notice things once you occupy the building that aren't operational. While they're doing the punch list, they're there to fix some of those little incidental items rather than calling them for a warranty issue. We'll also identify part of the commissioning and the engineer's affidavits. Substantial completion means that it's done for its intended use of occupancy. Once we have that, I wanna make sure we're efficient. In that moving part of it, we're gonna plan out, Mike and I have done very well with, soliciting moving companies to make sure whatever we're taking over, we're doing it efficiently, it's marked appropriately, the boxes, it's too funny, I've done this so long. Back in the day, they used to just mark the boxes what was in it. They never put a label on it where it was going, so it was never in the right place by the time we were done. Through the process now, we label where it goes now. I don't care what's in the box. I just wanna know exactly the room it's supposed to be going to. Because if the room number's on it, it goes to that room, the contents already are aware, because we do a cataloging with the department before they even put it in place. I don't want people to know what's in it, I just wanna know where that box is going at the end of the day. So we've gotten very efficient on that method, and we've had very little items within the spaces that we needed to be. So, then at that point, we'll have a warranty period. I typically put together a warranty cut sheet for the department, so if something comes up, they identify it. It goes to the subcontractors and general contractors, the designer and myself, and then we carry a log. So the log is basically identifying the issue, who's resolving it, what the resolution was, who signed off on it, and then it gets signed, it's removed off the warranty aspect of it. Too many times, a call gets made, oh yeah, I'll be right out, he comes out, he doesn't really fix it, and then it gets taken off the warranty and it's still a problem. Mechanical equipment, I'm not gonna utilize the new mechanical equipment for a heating source for the building as it gets completed. A lot of times, they get them up and running and we give them the benefit of the doubt to utilize it just for efficiency. But I find that a lot of times, if we're not clear about how we do it, the warranty period is from the time that it got fired up. And so we've lost 4 months of that warranty because they've used it for temporary heat. We're gonna make sure that they're utilizing that equipment only for the department as it gets completed. And that's pretty much where we're at right now, overall on warranty. This is gonna get refined, it's gonna get probably strong dates against it. I'm gonna definitely need the committee's involvement as we move forward on the approval process, because I definitely want the committee and the department voting on each step of the way so that we're all on the same page as we move forward.
I know our town attorney doesn't do any contract that there aren't penalties,
Yeah, liquidated damages.
liquidated damages.
So I'll talk to you a little bit about liquidated damages. The good news is, we're not knocking down the old station and they have to get relocated.
I get that.
In the state, in the Commonwealth of Mass, you have to prove damages, just to be crystal clear. So you have to encounter damages to be able to go after liquidated damages. The good news is, you can put a term of liquidated damages in the contract. You just remember, you pay for that. When a general contractor is gonna look at that, and he's gonna put a monetized value on that, because for whatever reason, he's not gonna do it and try to lose money. A lot of times during the question and answer period for the design, for the contractor, they may ask, is there a monetary value if they finish early? Right? I mean, why wouldn't it be if you're gonna hit them for being late? And usually I say no. I said, you don't have to pay general conditions, you made money, you're welcome to it. But that's always an argument back. So I put a monetized liquidated damage clause in there, but I don't make it excessive because you're end up paying for it. And if you,
I guess I wouldn't say excessive, but I just want to make sure that that's in the contract, having lived through one that, thank God, we had liquidated damages in there. And we actually collected on all.
I agree, and the way we track that and really make it monetarily feasible is that we track critical path. The only way they can delay and create a hard claim is if critical path was affected by some design or town-oriented issue. So by looking at the schedule, and we asked during the pay recs, as with a pay requisition is a monthly item that they turn in for the work completed and scope of work of services. We asked for a master schedule right from the very beginning. And that master schedule is a Bible on what they say over the 20 months or 18 months, this is how we're gonna get the building done. We track critical path, and critical path items are probably the most essential items that tell us whether they're on schedule or if they're falling off the schedule. They can't claim furthermore, they can claim a delay, but they have to show how it affected critical path. A lot of times, they don't that they don't stay on top of their file subs, so the file subs fall behind, so it domino affects the project as you move forward. And it may not be critical path. So as we manage the schedule, every job meeting, you'll hear out of my mouth during the job meeting, after all the minutes and all of the RFI submittals and everything else that were presented, I ask them, are you on schedule? And we document it in the meeting minutes. And then every month, we do a schedule analysis against the baseline schedule, to baseline what they gave us, to the schedule update that's required as part of the requisition on a monthly basis. And I actually use 2 pins and a string, believe it or not, on the master schedule. And I take their updated schedule to see if there's differentials in what they proposed, where they should be versus where they are. Sometimes they made up time, which is a good thing, but sometimes it works done out of sequence too, so that they're muddying the waters a little bit. And critical path items are more essential to me than just, making sure asphalt gets done, that type of thing. So that's how we manage that.
Questions from the committee?
I'm good.
Jamie, anything to add?
Was it thorough enough about the description? I probably gave you too much information, but.
Yeah, a little bit.
We'll hold you to every word of it.
All right, if you want to, I'm gonna have to.
Okay, so our next critical path date would be,
Right after the architect selection. So, what I would hope to do is the committee would give liberty to the town manager, myself and Michael, to negotiate a fee. Is that
that comes under his jurisdiction anyway.
Right.
He negotiates all contracts.
So I think the next one is the meeting on the 14th
14th.
for the architect selection.
Yeah,
And then I think after that, we look to have the architect, I think on the schedule here, to get a contract done by the end of the year. And then after that, I think you'd look at probably a January meeting to get the architect, Joe, and everybody back in. And I think that's where the chief is really smiling. He's trying to hide it, but then all of a sudden we're getting into, what's the program design? How do we get in Dressa's office out of the closet? What does the deputy chief want? What do the other officers want? And that's where I honestly mean it. Like, that's part of the funnest, that's one of the most funnest parts of the whole process.
without question.
It really is.
So there's 3 things: wishes, wants, and needs. So we want the needs and wants before the wishes. And so the last thing I wanted to mention, and Jamie hit it on the nose. We are going to require the designer, and that's one of the questions, to put a schedule of design together.
Right.
Because if we don't hit those milestones, it's gonna hurt our overall schedule impact. So I know what it takes for a design to be done right from start to finish with each phase. I'm gonna ask that part of the interview. I think maybe we ask the 3 candidates to come in and present a schedule of design so that it'll give us a better understanding of when they think their timeline. Because resources are tough. Designers may not have enough resources, and they'll indicate it on a schedule to you, whether they think they can get it done in those timelines. I think that's essential.
Yeah,
So,
agreed.
okay?
Good. Nothing else? Anything from the committee? Entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.